oxytocin and vasopressin. They are neurotransmitters, the chemicals that carry messages along the neural networks. These two are made in a part of the brain called the hypothalamus, which is connected to virtually every other part of the brain. The hypothalamus is the source of some of our most basic instincts, including desire.
Let us see if we can get a little less clinical, if you will, for a moment. It has long been the stuff of poetry, sappy movies, really bad musical lyrics, and more than a few suspect romances. But now there may actually be scientific proof that will shatter the cosmos and change our way of life forever. And it's all about being drunk and being in love. Our guest did the research. Well, not on both, actually, you can guess. From the School of Psychology at the University of Birmingham in the UK, let's welcome Dr. Ian Mitchell to MidPoint. Dr. Mitchell, thanks so much for being here.
Pleasure.
Dr. Mitchell, this is a fascinating study, basically pointing out that falling in love is similar to being drunk. And I guess the first question I always ask researchers such as yourself is, what made you want to go after this and start this sort of research?
Okay, so it's a long story. We've been interested in oxytocin for some time, and we've been trying to measure the levels in people and working out if those levels were related to any kind of clinical condition or any psychological traits. And one of my co-workers, Ahmed Abu Akel, he'd actually been administering oxytocin to people in Israel and looking to see how it affected empathy.
What is it, though, that made you go after oxytocin? Did you already know before you went into the research that there was some sort of connection here to what you were looking for?
We were interested in oxytocin because it's been known for 10 years or so that it gets released in certain brain areas when people, indeed animals, form close attachments to each other. So that's what we were initially interested in.
Now oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Please continue.
We'd simultaneously been working on alcohol and how alcohol affects some of our social cognitions. And so we started to notice the similarity between them. And from that point on, we then systematically went ahead and tried to compare what was known about the two agents.
Now, the oxytocin, from what I understand, it makes lovers feel relaxed, happy, more confident, but there's also a bit of a dark side to it, just like any other sort of chemical that creates an emotion in the brain, correct?
Absolutely. So when we enjoy pleasant tactile contact, especially from a loved one, we'll get a natural release of oxytocin in certain brain areas. But you can also boost the levels of oxytocin artificially by inhaling it, by snorting it. And so when you do that under laboratory conditions, you can start to measure, to assay what the compound is doing to people. And so based on that, we've been able to see that, yeah, it promotes many pro-social behaviors, but it also promotes some antisocial tendencies too.
Isn't it rather interesting, though, that apparently, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, that oxytocin and alcohol really cancel out each other? So why is it then if they cancel out each other, they basically have a lot of the same results?
Yeah, it's very interesting. There's just one paper that's come out of Australia which has demonstrated in rodents that if the rodents are given alcohol in the first instance, then given oxytocin afterwards, it decreases some of the motor signs of the alcohol. So we've not actually looked at motor behavior, which is handled by a different bit of the brain. So our best guess at the moment is those areas of the brain that handle motor control has an arrangement of oxytocin and alcohol which is slightly different, and there the effects are cancelling out rather than being sort of additive.
I found it interesting that one of the doctors quoted in the study, Dr. Stephen Gillespie, was talking about the idea of Dutch courage, which I guess is called so many things in different places around the world, but he has it here, having to drink to overcome nerves. So it battles these whole obstacles. Whatever we're talking about here, there's fear, there's anxiety in so many ways, so you're still building up a little courage one way or the other, whether you're in love or whether you're having a drink to get there, right?
Yeah, so there's a specific bit of the brain called the amygdala, which seems to handle a lot of the information relating to both anxiety and to fear, but they're slightly different bits of the amygdala that handle the two emotions. Oxytocin suppresses the activity of the circuits coming out of those brain areas, and alcohol does as well. Indeed, they seem to work on a common brain chemical called GABA.
So I got about a minute left here, and here's the interesting point, because if you're in love, you feel a certain way, and if you're having alcohol, you're feeling a certain way. So if you're having alcohol and you're falling in love with someone, how do you know whether it's the basic chemical in your brain or the alcohol that's working?
Well, I think it could add to a bit of confusion, and I'm sure many people have fallen into that trap.
Now, how do you know, though? I mean, do you know when it's real love and when it's not just the alcohol talking?
I think it might be hard to tell the two apart.
See?
It could be that real love has a more intense feeling. Alcohol generates a more generalized effect because it's acting on more receptor systems within the brain. But at a first guess, I think many people could be fooled.
And I think not only that, but we have to think it probably figures if you're going for the really cheap alcohol or if the expensive stuff. My goodness, one can only guess how that might have an effect. But either way, if you're falling in love, I tend to feel that you kind of know it eventually when it really does happen and when it's true. It's a fascinating study. Alcohol, oxytocin, similar brain effects. Drunk in love, it is all now backed by science. Doctor, this is what we have been waiting for. Now we finally get to that point where we can actually put the right on there and we can figure out what it is. Dr. Ian Mitchell, thanks so much. It's fun to talk to you. Thank you very much for the study.
Thank you very much indeed.
All right, pleasure to talk to you. When we come back, you can be drunk falling in love, you can be drunk, or you can be drunk with money and power. That means the Money Master comes up next when MidPoint continues.